Well, I mean, it gets to one of the things I've been thinking about in terms of the future of storytelling. And it's kind of tricky in this current moment because a lot of people want to make a point in their stories. And, that's the primary thing. It's the political angle, a commentary on the decline of the West or on progressive politics or something like that. And you see this sort of thing, I think, with there's certain kind of like conservative companies um, who try to kind of make a conservative version of left-wing media.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't seen all of their stuff, so I couldn't say this about everything, but it just strikes me that like some of what the Daily Wire tries to do is
Yeah.
is kind of like this. Whereas I think actually like if it's just about the artistic process, that's a kind of dangerous thing because it goes outside of um, ideology. It's actually in a different realm, really. If you're going to let people just make good art, and it's going to speak to probably above and beyond these debates, and maybe challenge on all sides because it's trying to engage with reality and with things beyond just the political. That doesn't mean it can't have a political edge. I think it will necessarily have that, but um, it might not sit comfortably with everything that we politically stand for. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Actually, maybe we should be allowing good stories to challenge us in that way.
Well, it's kind of like if you become a ideologue to the point where you're basically just on one team versus another team, and you're basically playing that sort of sports that sports battle out in your head. You're not really having your own ideas. You're not really saying anything profound or worth hearing,
Mm.
which is why I think the Daily Wire itself is generally declining in interest.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
still profitable, but it's had a lot of sort of moments of downturn, of lacking that sort of some authenticity, and also just lacking any real difference, I guess, between them and the left-wing version of them. I think,
Mm.
and the reason, like, it's kind of like they're I haven't seen this movie, but it's basically, I think it's called Run Hide Fight, is basically a girl boss movie.
Right.
Like, and somebody asked them, I remember distinctly, somebody asked them in a, like, on a uh was it a, like, it's like one of those, like, they're where they all sit down in like a circle or whatever and talk,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
I think it's called Backstage.
They have all
In
their
there,
cigars and things, right?
yes. And
Yeah.
somebody asked, when are you going to make movies with like a male protagonist, like about, like, that's geared
Mm.
towards a male audience? And I felt like the answer was really, like, really pathetic, because it was kind of like a we don't have the power over who submits us, like, work, like movies, like, because they're like looking at scripts, like there's like they're Hollywood
Mm.
producers, like they're still using the same
Mm.
people that are basically submitting scripts. It's just, oh yeah, maybe they have like a little difference with that, they couldn't get this movie done through a normal studio or like a Hollywood studio, and they're just,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, I can't do that, so I'm going to try and see if the Daily Wire want to make it. Well, that just means they're not looking at alternative places
Mhm.
for stories. They're looking literally at the same place that all the other Hollywood studios are looking for movies. So of course they're going to basically create a sort of leftist movie with like a Republican edge. And I mean Republican, I don't mean like
Mhm.
believing in a republic. I mean the party, like the party line.
Yeah, and there was something that you mentioned which I think maybe gets to some of the heart of this. You mentioned that they're coming from it with ideological lenses, and it's almost a rationalistic approach to a story. It's we have this sort of set of objectives, and we will tell them in this tale. And so you impose beliefs into a story, but to my mind, I don't think that's where great art or storytelling comes from. I think it primarily emerges through um, uncontrolled thought and feeling, or inspired thought and feeling. What do I mean by that? I think of Wagner, for example, Richard Wagner. His operas, he did not sit down and, okay, I'm going to write Tristan and Isolde today and think through all of the political messages that I'm going to get in there. Now, he was a very political fellow. I will not dispute that. And he did put his political messages in his operas. But where did that come from? He tells us one day the idea arose in his mind and he felt the story within him. And so all of that planning and thought and composition, the rational side complements that intuition that arose in him without his kind of deliberate prompting. Or you think of Tolkien, and he has this idea of the mulch of the mind. It's all of these things that he's read, which he's encountered. They give rise to something. The compost heap gives rise to certain thoughts and ideas which he couldn't have planned before. They just have to emerge naturally, or without being beckoned, as it were. And I mean, George MacDonald, who was a very big influence on Tolkien, he has a similar view, but he would say this is actually the divine. This is how the divine works. It creates a man who could have the idea of the Lord of the Rings, but not in a rational process. It's through this kind of emergent phenomenon almost. So to me, the good art or great art and stories and so on, you cannot politically and rationally prescribe them before the fact. They emerge through feeling and these kind of sudden moments of inspiration or gradual moments of inspiration. Whereas that kind of approach you've outlined is the antithesis of that, and maybe that's why it lacks that fire which makes you compelled to respond to something,